Hello, listeners. It's terrific to have you here again. This is Hear Her Sports, the podcast about female athletes and women in sports. I'm your host, Elizabeth Emery. Our guest this week is offshore sailor Hannah Stodel, who is working her way to the start line of the around-the-world race Vendee Globe. Hannah and I talk a lot about confidence, so as she shares her ways of managing doubt and about all of her meticulous preparations, keep in mind what exactly she is aiming to do. In the Vendee Globe, Hannah, who only has one arm, will race a 60-foot boat all by herself for 3 to 4 months without ever stopping back on land. Also, watch out for similarities between many of the things Hannah says and what both Jessica Berman from last week's Fast Track and Leah Neal from the previous episode say. Maybe these are a few things we should all be paying attention to. To read more about these connections, sign up for our newsletter at hearhersports.com. All right, enough preamble. Let's meet Hannah. Today, my guest is Hannah Stodel, 3 times world champion, 4 times Paralympian, and British Telecom YJA Young Sailor of the Year. At the Royal Hospital School in Ipswich, Hannah raced the 29er, Laser 3000, and Laser 4.7. She went on to represent Great Britain at youth and junior levels in the World and European Championships in the Mirror and 29 classes for the able-bodied. Hannah was born without a lower right arm. At 15, she started competing with her eyes on the Paralympics, and now she is preparing for the Vendee Globe, an incredible solo around-the-world race. Welcome, Hannah.
Thank you.
So I want to start out with the Vendee Globe because I heard you talk about it as, sometimes the first reaction is like, holy cow. So I want to talk a little bit about what exactly the race is and a little bit of that holy cowness of it.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely get that reaction. Certainly when I present it, I show a video of the Vendee and you can just see people's faces looking at the Vendee. So to give people context, the simple terms, the Vendee is a solo round the world yacht race that is done without any help and without stopping. So you basically come out of France, you turn left and you keep turning left all the way around the bottom of the globe until you find France again. That's essentially the Vendee Globe.
Simply put. So talk a little bit about some of those things that you mentioned, like racing solo and not having any help. And, what does that actually mean? Like, what are the logistics behind those things?
So basically, they mean the help, as in you don't have any crew on board. It's just you and a 60-foot boat. Also, you're not allowed any help with the routing. So when your weather comes in, you have to interpret that. You have to make those decisions. You're not allowed a team on shore analysing everything and saying, oh, what you should do is go further south and you'll get this advantage. Mm-hmm. It all comes down to the sailor on board. So in many respects, it's a very raw race.
What are you using for making decisions about how you're going to go?
So we have a lot of software on board. So it's not just, a lump of rock and a bit of seaweed. It's a lot more scientific than that. It's basically computer software that analyzes weather data, the boat's current speed and things. And obviously with all the navigation software as well, it does some magic wizardry in a box and basically is able to tell you where to go.
Right. And also in terms of solo, I mean, you're feeding yourself, and if you have medical issues, you're dealing with that also.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a race where you have to be everything on a boat. You have to be the medic, you have to be the chef, you have to be the engineer. It's a cool thing to be, actually, because it teaches you so many skills. Like, I never thought I would need to understand wiring and electronics and be able to pull a diesel engine apart. But these are all things I've been learning on my journey. So it's a pretty exciting time for me.
Right. Yeah. How are you preparing for this race?
I'd like to say it's all carefully planned out and followed. But that would be nonsense. I mean, literally most of my learning is done through absolute trial and error.
So what kind of trial and error? So you're going out, are you racing solo right now as practice?
No. Well, no, I tend to do training as solo rather than racing. A lot of my racing has been done with a minimal crew, which gives me a safety aspect.
Right.
If things do go wrong, it's less expensive and there's less risk of death, obviously, with a small number of other people on the boat. I'm working towards the solo stuff slowly but surely.
Right. And I do want to get back to the holy cowness of it. Talk about what it's like to be out there in the middle of the ocean racing all by yourself? Or even just what it's like to be out there in the middle of the ocean?
It's kind of like the best and the worst of sailing, which it sounds ridiculous, but it kind of like I often feel like I'm bipolar about it. It's like I'll come back from training or a race if it's been awful or something bad's happened. I'll be like, oh, I'm never going sailing again. I hate sailing. This is the worst idea ever. Who came up with this idea? And the next day I'll be bouncing around going, do you know what? It's amazing. I absolutely love it. So it's one of those really weird things where it has these ups and downs that are so emotional, but you never remember the bad stuff really. You only ever remember the good stuff when you get on shore, and it's like, that's the magic feeling.
What do you like about sailing? What is the magic?
Oh, the freedom. Sailing at night, the privilege of realizing that there are so few people out in those stretches of water when it's just you and the moonlight, and that is just an epic feeling, blasting down the waves in the dark and watching the stars, all the wildlife as well.
I bet it's so different, particularly like we're in 2019. I bet it's so different being out there than on land around now.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of peace and quiet out there. It's it makes you appreciate things, I'd say, a lot more. Like you're able to detach from, you know, the everyday life, emails, checking your phone every few seconds and all of that. Life becomes very simple out there.
Right. What will your connection be when you're out there?
So that's one of the most favorite questions people ask. And actually, like these days, solo sailing isn't solo sailing. It's just mental because the connectivity is unreal. You know,
Right.
You're permanently connected. The boat, no matter where you are on the planet, you can talk to someone. You can pick up the phone and talk to someone. You can web chat. You can WhatsApp. You can Skype. You can do all of these things, even, you know, hundreds of miles offshore.
So we talked about what you like. What has been the scariest moment, or what have you not liked?
I think for me, the toughest thing has been my anxiety control. I'm quite an anxious person, and I do have a lot of what ifs with this campaign. You know, what if this goes wrong? Will I be able to deal with it? But then every time I've experienced some really bad stuff, you know, I've just been able to cope with it and just cracked on. I think it's definitely showing me a lot about myself as a person.
What aspects of getting ready for the Vendee Globe are you concerned about, or are you thinking about, or are you particularly training for?
For me, we're doing a lot of work around my mental wellness and my level of stress management, because obviously being alone at sea for that length of time, it's quite daunting, you know, to have to go and be on your own for basically 100+ days and cope with a 60-foot machine that's keeping you alive is quite a big undertaking. So definitely a lot of work around my mindset going into that, as well as, you know, obviously the physical aspect of it. It's a 60-foot boat. You know, those are normally sailed with crews of 12 upwards. So to cope with that on my own has required another level of physical fitness that I just never thought was possible. Like, I knew I was strong, I knew I was pretty tough, but this is a whole other level.
Are you doing physical training?
Yeah, basically 6 days a week at the moment.
What are you doing?
I sort of mix it up at the moment. I'm working on some sort of high intensity cardio, a lot of weights, just trying to bulk up. One of the fun things about offshore sailing is before we go on any big trips, we're allowed to put a little bit of weight on. So that's quite nice.
Will you lose a lot of weight when you're out there?
Yeah, and I'm the worst for that as well, because like things are so busy once you're off. I have been known to go a few days without eating, and yeah, I basically lose a lot of weight. So it's a great weight loss program. Perhaps not so good for your health, but yeah. I mean, in a 10-day trip, I lost 5 kilograms.
Oh, wow.
So we have to be really careful with my wellness. I have to look after myself a bit more. So I'm learning to get better at that, but also we're protecting me a bit more by putting a little bit of chunk on before I go.
Right. And you're not allowed to go on shore, so all your food has to go with you when you set out originally.
Yeah, that's right. So basically you pack 120 days worth of food into your boat and off
Wow.
you go.
What are you packing, or what are you planning on packing?
Oh, I say it would be really delicious food. But
I can't
it's
imagine for
so,
day 98 that it's from
yeah,
a
I mean,
can.
well, no, it's not even from a can. I think a can would probably be more exciting. Anything that could be dehydrated is basically stuffed into a bag, and then you pour boiling water in it, and that's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And
Hmm.
there are some absolutely grim ones, but there are some manageable ones.
Any treats?
I have just discovered literally the best thing ever. So it's a chocolate chip pudding, and it's kind of like if someone took a load of cookies and like bashed them up and then put them in a bag, but then you mix like a little bit of hot water with it, and like I've eaten it for breakfast, for lunch, and for dinner, and it's amazing. Like,
Maybe that's all you should pack.
I know, right? I think my dietitian might have something to say about that. But yeah.
So, can you describe what, like what one of the 100 days will be like?
That's the thing for me. It's a little bit unknown. Like I go on my training and I go out there, and every trip is different. Every time something different happens, and I think that's kind of one of the things that I absolutely love about sailing is that it's always different. You can never expect anything because it just won't happen out there.
I understand that there's some particular areas of your trip that are going to be particularly difficult in terms of the waves and the weather conditions.
Yeah, for sure. So the Southern Ocean is probably going to be the toughest bit because basically everything is grey. The whole landscape is grey, nothing but towering waves and pretty big breeze down there. That's where people generally get into trouble. So that's definitely a scary area of the trip.
What do you have to do to prepare for that? Anything?
So we have actually planned into my timetable a training run through. So I will have done the Southern Ocean before the Vendee Globe.
Oh, wow.
So hopefully it won't be too scary.
That's a big undertaking.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think for me, it's been super important to do this journey one step at a time.
Hmm.
Like, whilst it's very easy to say I'm going to go out and do the Vendee Globe, I'm not going to be able to do the Vendee Globe without first building my mileage, building my experience, and taking the time to do it step by step.
And I've asked you a couple questions, and none of the answers have included anything about you only having one arm. Is there anything about that you're training for or that you're preparing in some way?
For me, my disability's it's never really a thing. It's not something I really think about. I mean, it's something my team think about probably daily, but I don't think about it on the boat, but my team do. So I get on with things and they figure out how I'm going to get on with things.
Right.
So I'm really lucky in that respect. But the boat will be adapted for me, and we already know how that's going to happen and what that looks like. So I'm quite fortunate that I've got some very clever people behind the scenes helping me.
Right. Well, how is your boat going to be adapted?
So we've had to think about things like, for example, the IMOCAs use what's called a pedestal. So it looks like a huge hand crank in the middle of the boat, and it basically powers the winches. So obviously, first up, it's a hand crank, so it requires two hands. So straight up, that's out the door for me. That's not physically possible logistically. So we had to look at that. So we're planning to put a bike in
Oh, wow.
to replace the hand crank. So yeah, that's going to be an exciting development.
Is that going to be like what the Volvo racers use?
Yeah, so like you saw in the America's Cup, like New Zealand had the bikes on the back,
Yeah.
and they basically brought in a cycling team to power the boat. Yeah, essentially that.
Cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Have you tried one of those?
No, we're thinking not an upright bike. Like the America's Cup guys do races that last 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, they don't go through massive waves, so we're thinking more recumbent bike.
Right. I guess you're training on recumbent bikes right now then.
Exactly. Yeah, I spend a lot of my time on a recumbent bike.
Well, that's great. Any other adaptations?
Yeah, so we had to think about certainly things like the sails.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very lucky that I'm supported by an amazing sail making team who have thought outside of the box, because I'll give you an example. So one of the front sails on an IMOCA weighs upwards of 400 kilograms. So moving one of those on your own is already, pretty tough job, even for the able-bodied guys. So we kind of thought around that problem and came up with a system that allows me to do that without large amounts of effort. And just, the guys are just, they always astound me with what they come up with. It's so different. It's so unique. I actually can't wait till we get to put it on a boat and people get to see it because, the ideas my guys come up with are just amazing.
You've talked a lot about your team. It sounds like your team is very large. Who all is on it?
Aye, quite the opposite. Yeah, my team's really small.
Oh.
But actually, that's how I have always wanted it to be, to have a very special group of people that I trust ultimately with my life and who support me for the right reasons. They're as keen to make history as I am. So, yeah, I'm very lucky. My team at the moment sits at 5 people.
Oh.
I have Alex, who's basically the director, manager, head of everything. So he kind of deals with the technical side of the boat. He's a boat builder by trade. So he looks after all of that kind of stuff and comes up with all these crazy, mad ideas. And then I have Sue, who's also my mum. She's a momager,
right.
I think is the term for that one. She does all the commercial side of things, so helps me with the sponsorship and keeping up to date with everything. Then there's another Hannah. So I have a Hannah 2, is her nickname, and she looks after all the logistics and looks after me and makes sure I eat and drink and I'm in the right place at the right time and where I'm supposed to be normally.
I need one of those.
Yeah, she's amazing, literally. I don't know how I survive every day without her, because normally it's, WhatsApp. We're not face-to-face very much, but it kind of just functions so well. She's an absolute legend. If I'm supposed to be somewhere or something is supposed to be somewhere, it will be. So she's pretty incredible. And then I have Quentin and Adam, who help me with the boat, do some racing with me, do some sailing with me, and just generally do anything that's needed. So they're pretty cool lads, and actually they started out with me on my Paralympic journey. So it's been nice to have them move over to this side of my journey and join me on the next bit.
Mm-hmm. Cool. For people who don't know much about sailing, I'm assuming that we'll be able to watch the Vendee Globe. What should we be watching for? How do we watch? Yeah. What are we looking at?
Well, so the really cool thing with the Vendee is it's very interactive. So they not only have an online race where you guys can join in and get all the same weather data that we're getting and make all the same decisions. So that's quite cool. People get to see if they can beat you. So that's quite good fun. Basically, there's daily video updates, there's phone calls, trackers,
wow,
live cameras on the boats. I mean, you name it, you can pretty much get it from the Vendee.
Right. How important are tactics?
Very. That's basically offshore racing, which it does sound bizarre for people that don't necessarily know it, but it's not just a question of speed. It's not, if someone's built the fastest boat, they'll win the race. It's not necessarily about that. It's about how they get around the weather systems that we encounter. It's how well they manage the maintenance and the upkeep of their boat for that long. It's also a little bit of luck. I mean, Mother Nature needs to be on your side for it to all go well and for you to be high up when you get to that finish line.
Are you good at tactics?
I'm good at the racing side of things, I would say. But I think I'm quite conservative, which is definitely something I'm trying to work on, because I'm, like I said before, I struggle with my anxiety. So I think I tend to rein it in quicker than other people. So I take my foot off the gas a little bit quicker than other people. So it's something I need to work on, like the balance between keeping the boat and myself together, but not giving too much away to my competitors.
Right. Do you like competing?
I do. I there's a little gremlin in me that is super, super competitive, and I get really grumpy when I don't do well. But I have to constantly remind myself that the whole point of this journey wasn't about winning the Vendee. Like, it's never been about that. And I have to force myself to say it, which is terrible. It's not about winning. The thing for me is the Vendee is about proving it can be done and challenging people's perceptions of what is possible. I firmly believe anything is possible, and that's why I want to go and do the Vendee. I want to prove it's possible for a disabled person. So if I finish the race and it's taken me, twice as long, that doesn't matter, because I will have finished the race and I will have proved it can be done. And then I'll go out next time and do better.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't know if I believe you that it doesn't matter that it would take you twice as long.
Actually, I'll be super frustrated if it's taking twice as long as everybody else. And yeah, no, it won't take me twice as long.
Right.
I think it will be like all offshore races. I think it will be absolute hell until I get to the end. And then it will be the most magical thing I've ever done.
Cool. Let's go back a little bit to the tactics. I mean, I've sailed and I was not a good sailor. So this is coming from a not a good sailor. But can you talk about the tactics? Like when you're faced with a decision, what is that about? Like what is the decision that you're making? And maybe what are also the factors that you're looking into?
So a lot of offshore racing, I find, comes down to how good your analysis of the weather has been and what is coming. I mean, it's not like, dinghy racing where you go out and it's literally very bang, bang, bang decision making. It's like, this boat has done this, so therefore we do this. It's very quick decision making, whereas offshore, you're looking days ahead and planning around weather systems that don't necessarily always do what you want them to do, and figuring out the best way around it. The boat on boat stuff almost comes second. Like it's still there in your mind. You're still kind of going, oh, well, if the fleet's north of me, like, am I too far south? Have I got enough west to get to this weather system? You're sort of weighing it all up, and then you've got to balance that with your boat's capabilities and your capabilities to get to a position. It's this constant juggling, checking, am I on target? What am I going to do about this storm? What am I going to do about this patch of no wind? So it's an interesting game. And actually, I think that's probably why I enjoy it so much, because there's so many facets of it. And it's never ending.
But sometimes you just have to go through a storm. You're not able to avoid it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you have to just deal with the consequences of it. It's like, right, what's my decision here? It's either I bash through this and hope for the best, or do I literally take all my sails down and hide? I mean,
Right.
These are all things we consider.
What's it like taking down the sails and hiding? I mean, you're still bashing around on the waves.
I have never got to a position where I've taken everything down. I've got to a position where I've been pretty dumb about having too much sail up. But luckily I did that with a coach, and he kind of let me make the mistake before telling me I was an idiot. So yeah, I've never been at a stage where I've just wanted to like hide inside the shell of the boat with no sails up. I've got to a very little amount of sail area up and been absolutely scared out of my wits. But yeah, you kind of just bash through.
Right. As I said, I have sailed, but I've never sailed on incredibly big waves. Is there any way to describe what that's like, what it's like to sail on just waves that normal people can't imagine?
Amazingly terrifying. It's like, imagine the roller coaster that's really fun, but you're always thinking the car is about to fall off the edge. And then what's going to happen if it all goes horribly wrong? Yeah, it's really good fun, and you're like, woohoo, this is great. And you're like cruising along, and then you're like, oh my God, the boat's going to come to a big stop in the back of the wave in front, or the wave behind is going to catch up and like squash the boat, basically. So yeah, it's amazingly terrifying, I would say.
Right. Are you good with fear, or what's your relationship with fear?
It's mostly a positive relationship, because I think most of my fear and my anxiety comes from the what if it goes wrong. So most of the time I'm able to reason with myself about my fear and say, it's a healthy relationship. The other positive thing I think it gives me is a healthy respect for what I'm up against. So I don't push the limits too hard. I'm not going to put my boat and myself in a ridiculous amount of danger. I just, like I say, rein it in a little bit and just try to stay alive and keep the boat in one piece. And that's kind of it. And I think ultimately you can let the fear consume you, or you can find ways around it. And ways around it for me are routine. You know, I'm very comfortable in my routine, and I know that if I do things in order, I'm doing the best job I can in that situation.
How are you going to manage routine and every day is different?
Yeah, that's the nice thing. I mean, luckily, like with the offshore stuff, everything needs to get done regardless. You know, the checking of the boat, the eating, the sleeping, all of these things have to be done. Those are, you know, you can't go that many days on no sleep without dying. It's just not possible. So all of the things on the routine have to get done. So now the order's different. That's all it is. It's basically one day it's one order, and the next day it's a different order. It's just, that's how it happens, I suppose.
Right. So you'll have a sort of a checklist of things that you need to check on the boat, you know, every 2 days or whatever?
Yes, basically. Yeah, mine's a bit more thorough, like I every day to make sure the boat's okay kind of thing.
Right.
The weather has to be downloaded. I have to eat a meal. I have to drink a drink. You know, if I can check these basic things off, then I know we're in good position.
And do you have I really like systems. Do you have a system for that? Like, will you have an actual piece of paper checklist or a computer checklist?
Yeah, it's a complete bone of contention with my guys because, like, I'm obsessed with laminated notes and things.
I love it.
And yeah, and other Hannah too, is just like, she loves sticking them onto the boat, and she has found now unicorn duct tape.
Nice.
So yeah, all my signs are stuck up with unicorns, or I think I did have penguins at one point. So, you know, adds a sort of cheerful note to it.
Right. That's great. So I want to go back a little bit to training. Can you talk about, you know, like, what are you doing every day? And, you know, it sounds like there's a couple different kinds of training. There's your actual physical training, but I'm gathering some mental training going on, and also tactical and boat training.
Yeah, there's a lot.
It sounds like a lot.
Yeah, actually everything that I'm doing means that pretty much every day is different. As much as I'd like to say, you know, I'm on the water more than I am in the office, it's just not going to happen. You know, with these campaigns, it's 70% of your time is behind the desk, you know, driving a computer, sadly not driving the boat, but that's part and parcel of it. So my days sort of vary. It really depends what I'm doing. And it can be anything from working on talks or presentations to doing the accounts, you know, really dull stuff. And then, you know, some days I'll be out sailing. Some days I'll be out pounding the pavement, trying to find sponsorship. Some days I'll just be in the gym looking after myself kind of thing. So it's quite a cool existence. It's crazy busy, but it's good fun.
Yep. And in preparation for the Vendee Globe, you mentioned that 70% is at the desk or not on the ocean. So for the Vendee Globe, is that about the same ratio that, you know, prep time takes that long?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, this game that I've decided to play is sadly financially driven. So, you know, the time it takes to find sponsors and to build relationships and to keep up with that side of the business is challenging, because, you know, I'd be much happier out on the water, but sadly that's not the reality of it.
We talked a little bit about competition. Why not just spend all your time on the water and not compete and just go for a sail every day?
I mean, that's the dream. I would love to be in a position to do that. I don't think the bank would be though. Like,
right.
You know, I have a house. I have to pay bills. You know, the guys can't work for free. Nothing is cheap, so it takes a while to build up that backing. So I have to work as well as train. You know, right up until I find that title sponsor. You know, you live within your means. So I have to earn money to go sailing, sadly. Pay for my addictive habit.
Right. But I mean, like, you could have, I don't know, just sort of a regular, normal 9 to 5 job, and then every day after work, go for a pleasure cruise, rather than, gearing up for the Vendee Globe.
I could do that, but then I would be boring, I think. 'Cause I mean, don't get me wrong, like, I'd love to be able to just take the boat out, but at the moment I'm financially in a position where I'm chartering a boat, so it's A, not my boat, and B, it's flipping expensive. So, every time I take her out, in the back of my mind, I'm like, don't break it. Do not break this boat, because if you break this boat, it's going to cost you a lot of money. So I have to weigh that up. I think it'll be different once I raise the money to buy my own boat, because I think I'll probably have to be wrestled off it to stop me sailing it randomly. But, at the moment I have to live within my means and be sensible about it.
We'll be right back. This is just a quick break to say support Hear Her Sports. Subscribe to the podcast, and even more importantly, tell your friends about the adventurous women you get to know here. Every week, there's motivation to be adventurous yourself, so I'd be thrilled if you pass that along to your pals and training partners. Sign up for the newsletter at hearhersports.com to read a couple of impressions from the interviews, plus find out what's up next. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at hearhersports. Now back to the conversation with 3-time world champion Hannah Stodel. You recently wrote a blog post about confidence. Can we talk about confidence, and what does that word mean to you?
See, confidence is something I've always struggled with, not just my own self-confidence. Like, I definitely realized coming off my Paralympic campaign that I had body image issues, for sure. I basically put on a lot of weight for Paralympic sailing, and it's made me I've got a very unhealthy relationship with food, I would say. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect, I think, for me is I don't believe in my ability very much. So I find it very easy to doubt myself and things I'm doing. So I need a lot of help in that area. I'm very lucky that the team I have supports me, but I'm also doing a lot of work outside of that to believe in myself a little bit more and believe in my ability things.
Certainly from the outside, that sounds insane. I mean, we all know that. All of us who have confidence issues, from the outside, it's very different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, it's been really important to be very open about it and very honest about it. And, whilst my social media is pretty positive, it's also at times quite open and honest. And I have been criticized for that. But to me, that's important. I want to share every aspect of this journey with people. And, if that's something as ridiculously seeming to the outside world about, my lack of confidence, then so be it. I think it's important to be authentic with these things. And that's something I pride myself in being. Maybe a little bit too much sometimes.
Well, I like the idea that, I think in the past when there wasn't maybe social media or there weren't more people talking about confidence, that it was assumed that everybody who was doing great things had tons of confidence, which obviously is not the case.
Yeah, definitely. And I think definitely these days it's really easy to look at social media and people's outward image to think that, wow, they must have an amazing life and things must be perfect for them. But, it's not necessarily always like that. These challenges, those of us that choose to take on these crazy big adventures, it's tough. It's not all fun. That's for sure.
And in your blog, I think I'll quote you. Let's see. You like to find out how other people cope with doubt, and how are you doing that? And also, what have you learned from asking other people that?
The biggest thing that sticks out for me whenever you ask that question, no matter who it is, like even down to some of my mentors, the people that are on my board of advisors, it's some pretty big names. And actually, everybody has that doubt, and realizing that everybody has that doubt and potentially that lack of confidence is quite a big realization, because it puts it in perspective. Whereas when I'm panicking about this lack of confidence and I'm doubting everything and every decision I make and so on, actually realizing that everybody's doing that too makes it seem that much more manageable.
Right. When you have a moment of lack of confidence, but you have an event coming up or something that you have to do, how are you sort of charging through, I guess, just getting the job done?
For me, I like to surround myself with people that believe in me. I find that really important. So in the run up to any big race or anything, having those people there that can reassure me, that can know that I am good enough and make me feel that I am good enough is really important for me. The other thing, I'm not going to lie, is I eat a lot of chocolate. It's got to be, there's got to be something said about the absolute delight of eating a chocolate bar and feeling better.
Right. Other than the chocolate, do you have other tactics that you've learned?
Yeah, so I have a wall of inspiration, which is full of these ridiculous things that I say to myself that reassure me that I'm in the right place. It's basically these neon signs with things I've written down over the years. And yeah, if ever I need to have a little reset, that's the wall I need to look at.
Nice. Have you worked with sports psychologists through the Paralympic committee or any of the other big racing that you've done?
Yeah, so all through my Paralympic career, I had basically access to a sports psychologist, worked through all of the stress exposure stuff, learning how to cope with the immense pressure that the Paralympics brings and all that kind of stuff. So that's been a bit of a journey in itself. And now I'm very lucky that I've just started working with a really incredible sports psychologist who is kind of getting to grips with the sailing side of things. He's not from a sailing background, so it's been exciting for him to learn the reality of offshore sailing. When they say you should sleep 8 hours and eat, all the greens and everything, and you should look after yourself. And then he goes through what I actually live on a day-to-day basis. I dread to think what he thinks of all of that. So you sleep 10 minutes? You should sleep 8 hours. Yeah, it's not possible on a boat.
Right. Yeah, that was going to be my next question. These questions about confidence, how is that going to impact your actual time on the boat, and particularly when you're going to be racing the Vendee Globe for 100 days or more?
I think for me, it's the step-by-step process. The Vendee Globe is a massive undertaking, and this crazy challenge I've set myself, it's not going to be easy for sure. And even getting to the start line, it's going to take a miracle. We've got a long way to go before the Vendee Globe. And if we stick to the plan, we follow step by step, we find those sponsors that believe in us, I do all the training miles that make me feel comfortable, I think my confidence issues and my doubt, whilst they'll still be there, I think it will be minimized.
You talked a little bit about the timetable of the Vendee Globe, that it's about a year away. Can you talk really specifically what's going to happen during that time, and talk about sponsors and also the prep that we've talked about?
Yeah, so the next edition of the race is in 2020. Now, I'll be brutally honest, at the moment, I am not on timetable to make that race. It's not going to happen. Strategically, I'm not in the right place. I don't have enough financial backing to make it possible. So at the moment, with my team, we're looking at pushing it back to the next edition, which will be 2024. So whilst that's been a difficult thing to come to terms with, missing this race, it's at the same time the right thing to do from many respects, from my safety, for one, for financially the other, it's not a sensible thing. And whilst we're still a month away from the actual deadline, unless a miracle happens, I don't think I'll be making the next edition of the race.
Okay. So what happens between now and 2024?
So between now and 2024, I'm planning, there's another around the world race that's just been announced. So my plan is to enter that race as well, which gets me some mileage, which gets me my Southern Ocean run. And then, of course, we have everything in between. So, the fundraising, the mileage build, the dealing with my self-confidence, my doubt, the learning all of the skills that come with this journey. So it gives us a bit more time to get everything in place, and for me to hit that start line feeling confident that it's possible.
Is that a solo race?
No, it's actually double-handed, which is
cool
for me. Yeah, one of the definite selling points about it, because I can race with a different person on every leg. Whilst it took me a while to get to there are loads of positives about this race. There are loads of positives. It's a stopping race, so it gives us time to maintain the boat. It also gives me the opportunity to sail with a different coach on every leg. The learning opportunity from this race is unreal.
Right. In some ways, it sounds like, having to deal with confidence is also creating these opportunities to work really hard and plan and, actually go through some of the stages, like, for example, doing one of the most difficult parts of the ocean.
Yeah, I mean, I don't celebrate it, I don't think, but I think also it's a healthy thing to have. I think, arrogance gets you bitten in the bum offshore, that's for sure. I know this much. If you underestimate what you're going up against, it comes back to bite you. And lots of offshore sailors have learned that the hard way, So I think whilst I need to get to a level where I am confident, I also think you can be overconfident. So I'm not necessarily thinking it's a bad thing, my lacking confidence, but I know that I need to improve it maybe a little bit.
Right. I had a really interesting conversation with Elena Myers-Taylor, who's a bobsledder, and she races with, female partners, but she's also a pilot for a male team. And she's learned a lot just watching the way that the two sexes deal with confidence. And sort of, she was saying that males will go out never having been in the top 10, but they go into the race thinking they're going to win.
Yeah, that's definitely something I've come across. Like my pro sailing, so the other side of the sailing that I do, I'm very lucky that I sail on a predominantly male racing team, and it's amazing the level of almost cockiness that they come in with. It's just like, I admire it, but at the same time I'm like, guys, you need to maybe check this, because complacency ruins races. We all know this. Like, you can be too confident going into this. So yeah, it's really different sailing with guys as it is sailing with girls.
That's interesting. I also have a lot of questions about the word of confidence, and I ask guests about this a lot. For me, confidence sounds like this non-yielding characteristic of a person, and it's really not like that. Like having confidence can alter day to day, or, like just situation to situation.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's completely fluid. I mean, you can wake up one day feeling perfectly confident, and you can wake up the next feeling completely not. I think like you say, it varies day to day, it varies in situations. It's completely fluid.
Yeah. What are your long-term goals? I mean, obviously the Vendee Globe, but after that, or just sort of in general, what are your goals?
I think for me, I'd never really considered my life after sailing. At the moment, my life is sailing and everything around that. But what I'm loving about this part of my journey is how much I'm getting to get out in front of people and to share this journey and to inspire people. And that's been the most magic part of this, is even at my lowest moments, is knowing that I can inspire maybe just one person. That's my whole campaign, and while that's not a very big goal, I suppose, in many respects, it's not about having kids or being married or whatever it is. To me, it's everything. This journey is all about challenging perceptions, and I love that I get to share that with people.
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge goal. I mean, I think it's interesting that we haven't talked that much about you only having one arm. I mean, how do you think about it day to day?
I mean, it annoys me at certain points in the day, like when I can't open a flipping tin of tuna, then yeah, it's going to annoy me, and I can't peel a potato without getting it everywhere or like slicing my hand off. there's definitely times when I'm like, oh, this would be so much simpler if I had two hands. But then the rest of the time, I suppose to me, it doesn't even factor into my life, which sounds really weird because obviously I am living with a disability, but to me, it's not even a thing.
Do you talk to kids a lot about dealing with disability and overcoming obstacles and just doing whatever the hell you want?
I do, yeah. So I do a lot of work in schools with inspiring and motivating people. And, the kids are brutal with their questions, right? Nothing's off limits when you go in front of some children, and straight up people are like, how did you lose your arm? Does it affect you? Can you do this? Can you do that? Whereas I think with adults, it's quite different, isn't it? It's like, let's not talk about it. Let's avoid that conversation just in case.
Right. For you, what has been the greatest benefit of being able to go into schools?
I think for me, it's not only good for me to share the journey and to get that motivation from inspiring people. I think also I like to think that I'm giving the kids the opportunity to not only see disability, but to also see what is possible and to see that even though I have a disability, it's not holding me back. It's not stopping me from doing anything except for tins of tuna. It's not stopping me from getting out.
Right. Before we finish up, do you have any advice for listeners or any thoughts you'd like to end on?
Well, the best piece of advice I ever got was from my uncle Jamie, who had it written on all of his boats, and it's something I have written on all of mine, which is never give up. And as cheesy as it is, as corny as it is to have that, I think that's super important. People have opinions, people judge, people have a perception of what's possible. And to me, if I think it's possible and I believe in myself, then that's what matters. And it's not going to stop me getting to the end of this race. And it's not going to stop me from following and chasing this dream of mine.
That seems like, if I had to give your life like one theme, it's definitely, I'm going to prove everybody wrong. I can do it.
Perseverance, I like to think of it. Yeah, I persevere, I set a goal and I keep going and I don't give up. That's the thing. I set out to do this. I've got the goal in mind. There's that saying, isn't it? If you can't stop thinking about it, don't stop working for it. And that's very much how I live my life. It gets me out of bed in the morning to go to the gym. It makes me eat endless amounts of broccoli over endless amounts of chocolate. It's everything.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
No worries at all. It's been good fun.
And I look forward to watching both this Vendee Globe, whether you're in it or not, and the Vendee Globe that you are in. That's going to be really fun.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I'll definitely be sharing it.
Yes. Excellent. Talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
As always, I'm so excited you're here showing support of women in sports. 44% of athletes are women. Only 4% of sports media coverage is about women. So a big thank you for doing your part by listening here. Send your thoughts about the new Fast Track series or any other episode. Email elizabeth@hearhersports.com or call the new hotline at 725-BE-BADASS. I really enjoyed hearing your voices, so thanks to everyone who has already called. Design is by Agnes Studio and music by the band Goldmines. Till next time, bye-bye.
I absolutely hate cardio. Absolutely hate cardio.